Dumelang Absheni Ralocha Sanmanani Molweni. My name is Naledi Mfoloe, and it is my absolute pleasure to welcome you to the latest edition of the African Diaspora News channel, where we unravel the stories that shape our world and our community. Now, the so-called Afrikaner-only settlement of Kleinfontein is facing a real struggle right now, and in what feels like a textbook case of white supremacy on full display, the Tshwane municipality has drastically inflated the property value of this enclave, which was a place that was established for white Afrikaners only, built on a land with no regard for the greater community. Now, Kleinfontein went from a modest valuation of 21 million rands to a whopping 291 million. And now, this white-only community, with its 900 hectares of land, could actually see its rates bill jump from 50,000 rand a month to a crippling 2 million rands a month. Now let that sink in. Let's watch.
In our view, we have a live, active and pending application, and we're quite upset that Tshwane has suddenly thrown us under the bus. They've hit us with punitive taxes. They're proposing a ridiculous tax, which is basically closing down Kleinfontein if it should go ahead. That is, I can equate it to a land grab. I can equate it to an eviction. And we've been trying our best to communicate with Tshwane. We've had a meeting in, I think it was April last year, with then Celia Brink. We should have had a follow-up in August. That didn't happen. He was, of course, relieved of his position. Then on the 10th of December, we had a great meeting with Deputy Mayor Eugene Medise. And on Twitter, he said he had great discussions with us. And what has happened since the 10th of December? Nothing. We've just been taxed, almost taxed to death. And then we find out that of the 19 so-called illegal settlements, we're the only one that has been slapped with a category of non-permitted. Leeuwfontein is still agricultural, like we used to be. And that is extremely unfair. But the motive of this is, one can try and guess. Is it politics of the day? Is Tshwane angry at us as a community? But anger is not going to solve the problem. The proposed revaluation, the taxation of Kleinfontein, is not doable. It is not possible for us to pay that.
Now, Kleinfontein's spokesperson, Danny de Beer, says a tax hike will be unaffordable and could very well lead to the collapse of the settlement. But let's break this down. Kleinfontein has always operated on the premise of self-sufficiency, an enclave where white Afrikaners can live without the interference of Black people. That's the founding idea behind this settlement, right? Which is Orania Light, as they call it, named after the more famous Afrikaner-only town, Orania. But here's the thing, right? The South African government, particularly the Tshwane municipality, has declared Kleinfontein illegal. The settlement has been operating without the proper zoning, land use, or infrastructure for residential purposes. So you have agricultural land being residentialized without the necessary services like water, sewage, or roads. And now they're feeling the financial squeeze. And this is no coincidence, if you ask me. Now, I do have to ask, right? Why are Black communities everywhere being taxed, displaced, criminalized for their survival? While these communities built on exclusion and apartheid ideas are being sheltered and protected by the very systems that oppress us. Because these settlers built Kleinfontein around a dream of self-determination. And while Black communities in South Africa, in Africa, continue to be dispossessed, disenfranchised, and marginalized. And now these settlers are crying foul because they might not be able to pay for the land that they illegally seized. So I'll say it again. They built a white-only settlement, and now they want us to believe that this property valuation is a plot to actually drive them out. But let's look at the bigger picture here, right? This whole scenario reeks of the same colonial mindset that's been used for centuries to divide, conquer, and control. Kleinfontein's existence is proof of that. a white-only community on stolen land that continues to operate outside of South African law, yet they expect sympathy when the consequences of that illegal occupation come home to roost. Now, make that make sense. Because think about this, right? For decades, Black people have been forced off land from urban areas to rural farms. We've been dispossessed of the land that was ours long before the systems actually existed. But now, here we have a group of people who thought they could take land that wasn't theirs, live on it, profit from it, and exclude us. And now they're facing the reality that the system doesn't work for them anymore. But the bigger issue lies in the hypocrisy. These Afrikaner-only spaces, places like Kleinfontein and Orania, want to pretend that they're just communities, but let's not be fooled. They are living monuments to apartheid. You can call it self-determination all you want, but at its core, it's the same old racial segregation under the gaze of preserving culture and protecting heritage. Because where was this self-determination when Black South Africans were denied basic rights and forced into homelands? Where was the respect for culture when land was stolen, when people were segregated, when laws were put in place to guarantee the survival of a few on the backs of many? This whole situation raises the question why these settlements still allowed to operate under the banner of cultural preservation when Black people continue to live with the scars of apartheid's violent legacy. We need to call out the hypocrisy in these systems, and we need to call out the continued exploitation of our communities, because as the deadline approaches for Kleinfontein to dispute the evaluation, I want to make it clear. This isn't just about one settlement. It's about the larger fight for land, for justice. If these settlers want to stay in a space where they can only exist without Black people, then they need to pay for it and pay for the system they've exploited. But mark my words, this isn't just the end of the struggle. It's just one chapter of the ongoing battle for justice in South Africa. And as Black people, I believe that we must demand accountability. We must demand truth, and we must demand that those who benefit from apartheid and its legacy actually pay the price. What are your thoughts on this? Please, let's continue the conversation in the comments section. I'd really like to hear your thoughts on this. And while you're at it, don't forget to give this video a